The following is a presentation of the BP8 Podcast Network.
Hi, folks. Brian Pate from the Pate Realty Group at Keller Williams Preferred in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I want to welcome you to our podcast, Brian Pate on Real Estate, part of the BP8 Podcast Network. We're glad you're joining us today. So I brought along two of my team members today because I thought it'd be a good idea for you guys to get to know some of our team members. The first one we have brought is Marsha Smith, who is our lead buyer specialist. Marsha, say hello.
Hey, everybody.
And we have also brought with us William Coronado, affectionately known as Willie. Willie has joined us as a buyer's agent, moved here from Pinehurst back in May to be part of the team, and Willie is bilingual in both English and Spanish. So, Willie, say hello to everybody.
Hola, amigos.
So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to give you some background. We're going to let you learn a little bit about Marsha and Willie and where they grew up. They've both got great stories. And as you know, I like to tell great stories when it comes to real estate when we feature our friends. So Marsha, why don't you start us off? Tell us a little bit about, because you're a Raleigh native.
Close.
I call you a semi-native, I guess.
I'm just not native when it comes to things like fried chicken. We might lose listeners on this because I don't do that. Originally from Baltimore, Maryland. I moved to North Carolina, though, when I was 3 or 4 and have called Raleigh home other than a brief stint in Colorado and Boston after college. So for all intents purposes, yes, I am a native.
All right. And you went to high school locally too, right?
I did. I actually met my husband here in Raleigh at freshman year, first day of class, in Spanish class, nonetheless. So we were best friends through high school, and then we started dating right before we graduated and off and on through college. Go Phoenix, we went to Raleigh Charter. If anybody ever has any questions about the charter school systems here in Raleigh, I would love to buy you a cup of coffee and answer whatever questions you might have.
Very good. And then you spent a lot of time looking at dad's houses. You want to tell us about your dad?
I did. So my dad was a custom home builder here through the late 90s, early 2000s. So I spent a lot of my childhood, especially in the summers, being my dad's sidekick. My first job was he'd pay me to sweep the houses before he would do site walkthroughs with his clients. And I would practice my gymnastics, which I was terrible, but I would practice my gymnastics on rolls of carpet before they were rolled out in these big houses. I rode my first horse and got riding lessons at Wakefield Barn back before the school was there. It was a giant field.
Right.
And Dad would drop me off at the barn and I'd have a riding lesson, and then I'd go see what house he was building at the time. And it was pretty neat. It was back, Wakefield was this kind of open space, nothing there. So it's been neat to see how things have changed.
Absolutely. So your first job was basically sweeping floors for your dad.
Dad paid me to sweep floors. Yep.
Willie, what was your first job?
Connection.
Connection.
I actually was a housekeeping as well. My mother has a housekeeping company in Pinehurst, so I was her employee for a couple of years.
Okay, gotcha. So you guys had the same first job, basically. Isn't that cool?
We did. I just got it, before there were things like carpet. So
there you go.
I took care of the sawdust. He just dusted.
Very good. Very good.
Pretty much. I like dusting and vacuuming the house.
So, Marsha, when did you get your real estate license?
I got my let me think about that. I got my real estate license about 4 years ago.
Okay.
Prior to real estate, I was in hotel management and full service hospitality. I started in the hotel business in college because I needed a job and I was not graceful enough to waitress. So front desk of a hotel seemed like a good fit. And I pretty quickly fell in love with the industry and customer service. From there, that's what took me to Colorado after college, and then back here to Raleigh, and finally decided that it was time to take customer service in a different direction. Good news is people don't usually buy homes at 2 or 3 in the morning. So my hours, while busy, are not quite as crazy, which is how Caroline, our 2-year-old little girl, exists.
Yes. And so we have to talk about Caroline. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the little monster.
My mobster, yeah. She's our pride and joy, the light of our life, and also the chaos in our world.
Absolutely.
But it's been really fun, and it's been fun to show her things that I remember as a kid around town, and seeing her interact with my mom and dad, and taking her to places like the Forks, which it's now in a different location than it used to be, but it's still fun kind of sharing those across generations.
Absolutely. Very cool. Very cool. So Willie, why don't you tell everybody your story?
Well, I'm originally from Mexico, Veracruz, Mexico.
For those of you in the South, that's Veracruz, Mexico.
Veracruz, Mexico with
Could you
another
please do that with a
accent.
southern accent?
Veracruz, Mexico.
Meh.
That's too far south.
Very, very, very much. Although we don't have sweet tea over there.
There you go.
Yeah, so actually I came here for the first time with my mother back in 1999, September 1999. And I was registered to school. But before you do that, you have to
So wait a minute. So that means that 19 years ago, next month, you will have been in the United States.
Yeah, I
that
never
right?
thought about that. That's
so
true.
Interesting
Fact.
sidebar.
Yes.
Today that we're recording this is August 23rd, 2018. I moved to Raleigh, North Carolina on August 23rd, 1989.
What?
Captain's log.
Captain's
Stardate.
log, star date 1989. And incredibly enough, I moved here. I told my parents that I was going to be a DJ, and I did that. But my real job was that I was a ring announcer for World Championship Wrestling, and they never knew.
Oh my goodness.
That is amazing.
That was a long time
Yeah.
ago. All right, so Willie, keep telling us your story. You moved here in September, or moved to the U.S. in 1999, September.
Yes, and I'm sorry, it just got me off guard that I've been here that many years.
Yeah,
So
that's
yes,
cool.
so before I joined school, they actually make a test for you to see how far are you in the English language, and I still have that still evaluation, and my results were 0 comprehension in English, 0 able to write and speak English. So everything was like this
So you
guy,
couldn't write it or speak it at all.
anything at all.
How old were you when you came here?
12 years old.
12 years old. Wow.
Yes. So I joined Heaven's Court in Oakland, California, and that's where I began my journey or my transition to United States. Now, how I did it or how I communicated with my peeps at school was a little interesting because if you live in California, there's a lot of people who speak Spanish.
Sure.
So there's not a lot of need of you to speak English. So I would ask my peers, hey, so what was the homework for today? So they would help me out and just tell me, hey, so this is the assignment that you have to do, and I would just do it as I could because there was no Google or iPads,
Right.
on those
Yeah,
days.
and think about like how things.
I have to go to the
technology
library. I have to go to the library.
changed people moving to countries.
Yes.
That's cool.
So I have to go to the library and borrow a computer to use the internet. So
Dial up.
yeah, I know. So
14.4 baud rate modem.
Oh yeah.
if you're wondering how old I am, I'm 31 years old.
Right?
So-
when Willie is not a dinosaur, as it sounds like, right?
Let me tell you a story about
Back in my day.
the landline. So what is very interesting is that after advisors said that I was not putting a lot of effort on learning English, so she spoke to my mother and she said, you need to put this kid into English classes and everything in English. So
So submerge you into it.
yes.
Okay.
So I had to do everything in English, and to my surprise, I got it.
That's cool.
I learned. I was motivated to keep learning English, and somehow I learned it from watching movies with subtitles and listening to music, and I guess reading got me into more learning, writing and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So-
Okay. So when did you move to North Carolina?
My mother actually remarried back in when I was 16 years old, and she married an amazing Christian guy, and she decided to move here to North Carolina first. So I followed her, and that transition from the West Coast to the East Coast was challenging, especially in Pinehurst, where you get to see a lot of, all green, whereas in Oakland, you get to see buildings, and San Francisco is just about 15 minutes if you take the BART and stuff like that. So it was challenging, but I joined high school. That was my freshman year.
Oh my God, I can't imagine moving across the country. Never mind being still learning the language and the area, and then starting high school at the same time.
Yeah, and it's challenging because it's not only the language but the culture as well.
Oh,
It's not
yeah.
the same. It's not the same living in California
Sure.
than
Oh yeah.
Oh no, yeah.
Then-
High school alone, even if you're in the same city, is a different culture. Let alone.
And because of the fact that I was moving from the West Coast, I was supposed to be taking my sophomore year, but because something with the language and stuff like that, or I guess it's the same thing for other folks, they backed me up one semester, which means that I still needed to take extra classes to complete my freshman year. So that made it a little bit difficult. But the high school I went in Pinehurst is Pinecrest High School.
Pinecrest, very familiar with that.
Patriots.
For you Heritage High School fans, you remember Pinecrest? I'll just tell you, we beat them in the state playoffs a couple of years ago, just to let you know. So
Thank you for the side note. Appreciate that.
always try to help when I can.
Thank you. So I later joined San Hills Community College, and that's where my journey began because my mother has as I told you earlier, my mother has a housekeeping company, so it worked better for me to help her, and that way we pretty much working during the afternoons. We made it to college for I guess 4 years, so I pay college with my mother, or my parents by this point, doing housekeeping. So Marsha,
So you work
cool.
to pay your tuition, basically.
yeah.
Wow.
So it is challenging whenever you're holding the vacuum cleaner
Yeah.
and then dusting around the house. And but what's funny is that at the same time, I never thought that, I would learn more about the houses, more about the people, because you're cleaning their houses. So
Yeah.
you
You're
get
in
to
them.
know them more. And I began to not only do housekeeping, but also house sitting for people who leave their houses for even, for a couple weeks. I will be just the guy who take care of the cats and sometimes dogs.
Right.
So I graduated in 2012, May 2012, with a associate in science degree.
Very cool. Very cool. So you're a not quite yet a rags to riches story. We're working on the riches, but literally
He's come a long way.
Yeah, this is a great example of when it's done the right way. This is what happens, and people become very successful, and it's exciting to hear things like that. So, well, let's switch our conversation to real estate a little bit, and we'll start out with a little fun question, and we'll see how it
All
goes.
right.
So what I want to know is, what is the weirdest thing that you've ever seen when you showed a house?
Oh,
And remember that we have families listening, so we try to keep it as clean as we can. So innuendo is welcome, certainly. Marsha, ladies first.
I have so many choices. It's one of my favorite parts about real estate is I lovingly tell people I break and enter for a living because I do. As a buyer's agent, I have access to, and I go in, and that's what I do. I show people's houses, but it constantly floors me as to what people will leave and what condition they will leave their house in, or what a listing agent will advertise something as, like fenced in backyard, and the back fence is actually the prison. Things like that.
Nice.
Yeah, things like that are
Nice.
funny, but the one that really sticks to mind is actually a house that I already had under contract. It was a year ago this past April. And it was a luxury home up in North Raleigh, and we were doing the final walkthrough. And if you'll remember, it was a really wet April. It had rained. You know where I'm going with this story.
I do.
It had rained, and it had rained for like a week straight. And the house was vacant already. The seller was actually moving to Mexico. He's moving back to Mexico. And he stopped by the house about an hour before we were going to be there to check on things before we did the final walkthrough. And I get a call from the listing agent, and she goes, I got some bad news for you. Some of the roof tiles blew off in the storm, and it is currently raining into the house. The good news is the seller is aware of it. He's the one that caught it, and he's actively working with his insurance company. Please don't let this all fall apart. So to make a very long-winded story short, it had in fact rained to the point where the walls were soaked through the 2-story foyer, through the first floor into the dining room, or second floor into the dining room. But the seller, the house being completely vacant, ran to the hardware store, or the grocery store, and got the first 2 things he could think of. So he took a roll of blue painter's tape and a massive pack of super women's maxi pads and peeled and stuck individual maxi pads going up the rafters in the attic, and then taped them on to, super
absorbent
all of the rain. And I've got to give him some MacGyver credit on that. I don't think that would be at the top of most men's minds.
I'm pretty sure.
But needless to say, the buyers, the sellers, the listing agent, and I all had a really good laugh at that, and I've got some good pictures for it.
Very good. That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Willie, what about you?
So I was thinking about one of the transactions that I had that it wasn't nothing perhaps with the house. It's just that I was trying to find the line that separates between, one house and the other.
Okay. The property line?
Property line. Thank you for the word. So I was so focused on trying to find where was located that, ribbon, either pink ribbon, that I totally lost sight of where I was walking. And then when I felt that I was getting lost, interestingly, I stepped on a snake.
Oh, I would have lost it.
Oh,
and then
I'd be done.
In the middle of the woods, my phone, no signal at all. I freaked out, and I don't know where to run. My first thought is just that, my skin shade is a little bit, it's different now, but I was pale.
Right.
I run away, and then I just told the buyer, I think that I found the property line somewhere. If you want to check it out, just to let you know, there's like a snake over there, and you don't want to go towards that direction. No.
Oh, you got lucky.
But if it's just like,
oh yeah, no, I would.
Seeing a snake,
I'd be done.
By your feet, it's just
nope.
Wow. But it was just one of those experiences that I had that and I learned you always wear boots whenever you have to find your property line.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna flip this around and ask you. In your years of real estate, what is the weirdest thing you've seen?
Well, I'm sad to say I've walked in on 2 teenage couples in the middle of getting busy with each other, and that was embarrassing. We had one house that I went to show, and this was back in the 90s when I was working at Fonville Morrissey at the Six Forks office. But I walked in, and on display was a bong collection.
All right.
And it was in the son's room, and the mother told me that it was his ashtray collection, and so I had to give her a little bit of a lesson and explain to her this is not an ashtray, this is a bong, and that was a little bit different. But I think probably my favorite story, and I've told this in class, so if people have taken my class before, you've probably heard this one, but I was doing a termite inspection with a guy named Kenny Branch who runs Swift Creek Exterminating. And we were at a house on Partridge Lane in North Raleigh, and Connie Sharp was my client. She's the buyer. As a matter of fact, she still lives there almost 25 years later. And the house we were doing a termite inspection. And Kenny's a good old boy. He drove a beat-up blue truck and showed up and put on his coveralls and went underneath with his screwdriver and his little flashlight and all that stuff. And I was dressed in a suit and tie because I had a closing later on in the day. And from underneath the crawl space, and keep in mind, I don't go in crawl spaces because in the very, very beginning of my career, I was in a crawl space and a snake crawled across my leg.
Nope.
And I'm sure I screamed like a little 5-year-old girl.
I can relate to that, of course.
Yeah, I don't go into crawl spaces, but Kenny calls me and I hear him from underneath. Brian, you need to go get that other pair of coveralls in the back of the truck. You need to see this. And I'm like, no, I'm not coming under there. He said, you got to see this so you understand what I'm talking about. So I go over to his truck and I put on these coveralls. and I get underneath the house and I'm looking underneath it, and this is back in the day before international code. So what they would do is if they had a long run, this is only about a 1,500 square foot ranch property, but down the middle of it was the support beam. It was pier and beam structure. And so they had taken 3 2x12s and turned them vertically. And they were banded together, and they literally ran the entire length of the house. So it was the main support beam for the entire house that we were looking at. And Kenny said, all right, he took his pencil out. He says, now I want you to look on the other side. So I ducked my head underneath to look to the other side. And as I did so, Kenny pushed that pencil all the way through, all 6 inches of that. And it wasn't like he pounded it with the hammer. He literally pushed it with his finger. And as it came out the other side, I was looking up, and I feel falling onto the back of my neck, and then going down the back of these coveralls are thousands of carpenter ants. They had eaten through the 6x12 basically, and they turned it into sawdust. So the house was literally being supported by the exterior beams. Oh God. All I remember is screaming and hollering. I lifted my head up, and I hit it so hard that on the back of my head, I ended up getting a couple of stitches. You can still see the mark right now. And went running out, and Kenny, I've never heard Kenny belly laugh that hard. He laughed at me. He says, "Good Lord, son, you sound like a little girl." And I was like, "Don't you ever do that to me again." But that was the most interesting one for me. And of course, everybody that knows me knows that I very rarely am I out of control. I like knowing what I'm doing. I like being the person that is in on the secret, not the one receiving the surprise and that kind of thing. So needless to say, Kenny has enjoyed this one. And of course, Kenny's done termite inspections for me for 25 years at this point. We're still friends, and him and his family. Amanda, part of his family, still answers the phone down there, and they do our treatment for the office and both my mom and dad's house here in Wake Forest, as well as our own house. So good folks, but a great story. And Kenny still shakes his head and giggles. Yeah, I remember that day. And now his sons are, I get to tell his sons those stories when they come over. So let's talk a little bit about the current market that we're seeing. And I want you guys to tell me what you're seeing in terms of activity levels on homes. Are you seeing, 6 months ago, we were seeing multiple offers to the tune of 6, 7, 8 multiple offers on a property, especially if it was under $300,000. What are you guys seeing as buyers agents out there? What are the biggest challenges that the buyers face?
I'm seeing it divided more, and I'm curious to see what Willie says on this too. I'm seeing it divided more based on location than price point.
Okay.
So, it used to be that as long as the house was in good shape, if it was under $300,000, it's going to fly off the market wherever it is. And to some extent, that's still true. I'm seeing it shift a little bit more, partially as I think sellers don't necessarily need to sell, but they're trying to capitalize on the market, are getting a little greedy. And I'm seeing days on market kind of shift because of that. But if it is a good property and it's in Wake County, especially, I would say, or Durham's got a very similar situation going on, but talking about Wake County, if it's in an area that first-time home buyers or young families are really looking to go, I'm still seeing crazy bidding wars. And what has changed the most is I'm seeing astronomical, like, I have a hard time advising anybody to risk astronomically high due diligence. Mm-hmm. And it's giving an interesting change to the negotiating field.
Well, and for those that may not be familiar with the business and how things work here in North Carolina, the due diligence is basically a non-refundable fee that the buyer pays directly to the seller at the time of contract, and only in the result of breach by the seller does the buyer receive that money back. And a couple of years ago, we would see anywhere from $300 to $750, and even on some of the higher end houses, we'd maybe see $1,000, $1,200. but we've literally seen $5,000 and $10,000 due diligences over the past year and a half.
I saw somebody $10,000 on a $165,000 property.
Exactly. They're putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, if you're a seller and you get one of those, even if they're a couple of $1,000s less, you can guarantee that they're going to be more likely to stay in that contract.
Well, and that's what I'm seeing it's putting more pressure on the idea that in North Carolina, the way the offer to purchase is written, homes are being sold in as-is condition.
Correct.
During your due diligence period, you have the opportunity to negotiate, but the seller doesn't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing more of the seller not having to do anything or not being willing to, because either they know that they've got you because you're not going to walk away from 10 grand,
Mm-hmm.
or they've got a line of backup offers sitting willing to take it in as-is condition.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. Willie, what about you?
I think that I've seen most of the activity through hosting open houses lately, especially houses that are either or $200,000 or below. Especially, I remember one of the properties that we were listing in Cary. I don't remember exactly the address.
Yep.
So I went to the open house, and then on Saturday from 12 to 3 o'clock. And then on the next day, it was already under contract.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful location, as Marsha said. Was it a townhouse?
It was a condo. Yep.
Condo.
This was on Spring Fork. Yep.
Yes,
Over in
yes.
Cary. Yep.
Beautiful view on the back porch.
Yeah.
It was amazing. But whenever it comes to location, I think I second you on that, Marsha. It is, location when people are fighting the most.
And see, that one was very interesting because not only did we sell that one in 24 hours, but we also got a couple of lead calls that we gave to one of our other buyer specialists, Chris Barr. And Chris, there was another listing in that neighborhood that went on the market on Sunday after ours went under contract on Saturday.
Amazing.
And Chris actually wrote an offer on that one too. So we actually have two of those.
We have three because the sellers of Spring Fork are buying the one upstairs.
Exactly. So, and the interesting piece is that the purchases are all either cash or significant down payment.
Yes.
So we're pushing the price up, and it's very interesting because one of the things that we're doing as a team on the list side that we're promoting, that's a little bit, we're always looking for that unique identifier for the Pate Realty Group. And one of the things we can advertise that we sell in a median list time of 3 to 4 days. But what's interesting enough that we'll be able to promote is that we are selling our listings at a higher price in those neighborhoods than has ever been sold for that model of home before. And that's an advantage that it does give us.
And I think that... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I saw that activity as well, interestingly, the next weekend when I host the other open house at the... in Wake Forest, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And then there was people who were just asking me, has anyone made an offer yet, or what's going to be the time up for us to present an offer? And I said, well, this is the open house. We haven't received any offers, but if you have to do something, you have to act accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that one of the things as a buyer specialist that I would encourage people to do, because there is definitely that pool of buyers out there that at this point they're just tired. They've been looking to buy something for sometimes a year or two at this point, and they've just said, you know what, I'm just too tired. I'm not going to do it.
Kind of discouraged.
So they've being beat out numerous times in multiple offer situations is going to run you ragged.
Yes.
Because you have to be emotionally invested to some extent to get excited about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it is a roller coaster. There's no way to hide that. But I would encourage the people that maybe have taken a year off or 6 months off to maybe think about picking it back up again, because we are seeing some shift and some changes. The market is definitely different now than it was 6 months ago, and I suspect it'll be different 6 months from now. So it's not a bad idea after you've given yourself a needed break to maybe revisit it, and also encouraging people that to shop your buyer's agent and find a buyer's agent who's willing to think outside the box.
Absolutely.
And there are plenty of great buyer's agents out there. I'd love to say that our team is, the only ones, and that's certainly not the case. But there are ways above and beyond setting up a search for somebody and telling them when that they should go look at a house that you can go find and actually seek out inventory for a buyer.
Absolutely.
And that's been I'd say in the last year, that's been my biggest success, has been finding things that aren't on the market.
Right. Well, and we're seeing a lot more of that with the off the market listings and pocket listings and things like that. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, and continue to see that as we go forward.
Because people don't want to sell their house out from underneath of them until they figure out what they're doing next, but they want to toy with the idea.
What if?
Yeah, the what if the what if scenario.
Very good. Well, I want to say thank you to both of you guys for your time. Willie, go ahead and tell us your contact information, your phone number, your email address.
Yes. So again, my name is William Coronado, and as Brian mentioned at the very beginning, they call me Willie. I go by Willie at the office. My phone number is 910-528-5760. You can also follow me on Facebook, which is William Coronado. Then you're going to find me there. Or you can send me a text message, and I'll send you my Snap app information.
Okay. And then you're also on Instagram.
Yes,
at
I am.
Agent Coronado, right?
Agent_Coronado at Instagram. So
Yep. Very good. Very good. All right, Marsha, what about you? She's looking looking it up on her phone.
Yeah, of course. I thought you were looking for my Instagram.
True story. I just want to make sure that I'm giving people my right Instagram handle. But my phone number is 919-740-5276. I spell my name Marsha. It is Marsha like the Brady, but I will fight you to say that I spell it differently than she did. My Instagram handle is MATomp. That's THOMP 4. I had Instagram before I got married, so
Right.
that's my. I might spruce up that handle in the future, but I love to have fun with it. It's not just about real estate. I'm not that person that's just going to post things about houses and inventory in the market. Actually, a majority of my Instagram posts are about dogs or ridiculous things or my child. So when in doubt, have fun, because otherwise in this crazy world, you're going to go crazy.
Exactly.
Hey, let me double check my Instagram now that Marsha had the chance to correct hers. So mine is Agent_Coronado 910.
910.
Yes.
And Coronado is CORONADO. For those of you from North Carolina, that's spelled like tornado.
Well, if you can remember the Coronado Island over there.
There you go. The Coronado Islands. Very good. Well, thank you both for taking the time out to be here today. Excited to get to know you guys. Hope those of you that are listening in have enjoyed our show today. And as these two will tell you, if you are currently thinking about buying a home, selling a home, or investing in real estate, give us a call and go visit us online at paterealty.com.
Yeah, check out our website. It's pretty.
Yeah,
now.
the new the new website has launched. We're very excited to have it, so go check it out. You can search every home in the market, and when you find the home you like, you scroll down to the bottom of that page, and you can figure out your mortgage numbers and everything. And if you really like something, you just click on Contact Us, and one of these great buyer's agents sitting in front of me right here will take very good care of you. So thanks again, you two, for being here. I hope you and your families have a fantastic week and weekend, and we'll see you next time on the Brian Pate on Real Estate podcast here on the BP8 Media Network.